What's up, everyone? Get ready for one of the most impactful coaching videos you have ever seen. I'm a humble guy, so trust me when I say this, that watching this will equal immediate improvement if you go out and practice what we talk about. So check it out. Here's what I have in store for you. This video is all about racket prep. Now, there are many technical elements that go into squash, from the hitting side of things, from the movement side of things. There's the physical conditioning side of things. This is all about one element of them, and I'm going to tell you a whole bunch more in a minute. My goal is to make this video thorough and exhaustive. I want this to be as complete as possible so you guys can understand and see what appropriate racket prep looks like in different scenarios. I'm going to show you comparisons so that you can actually see the difference. When I'm not just going to say, oh yeah, do this over here. I'm going to show you using Coll as a specific example and show you how in different scenarios the racket prep changes. My fourth goal in this video is to really raise your awareness and your knowledge base. Now, the reason this is so important is because as we raise our awareness, we're suddenly exposed to new levels of information and knowledge. And because of that, we now have new choices available to us. And with new choices, if you choose to make a different choice, you can get new, different, and hopefully better results. So my hope is, by showing you the things that we're going to get into in a minute, it's going to raise your awareness about certain things that you previously were not aware of. As a result, when you go practice either solo drills to begin with, you can then deliberately practice some of the technical things we talk about, and eventually that will translate into your actual gameplay and help you. And speaking of this hierarchy or evolution of learning, there are a couple of things I want to mention here. One is, as we increase our knowledge and raise our awareness, we can make different choices which lead to different and better results. That's one thing. Very simple but very powerful. There's a guy named Robin Sharma who's this like a self-help kind of person, and I heard that from him and I found it very powerful. The next thing when it comes to learning and evolving, both as a human being and in squash, is to think about pressure. So you want to start with little to no pressure and then eventually apply your newly learned skills with or under significant pressure. So that would mean solo practice easy feeds or coach-based easy feeds to start off, no pressure. Eventually working up to playing a match against someone of equal or better skill and being able to apply the new skills that you've learned. There's obviously an approach through that. If you have questions, let me know. The next thing I want to show you is the importance of consistency, and there's one clip in particular we're going to get to that's going to elucidate that for you. And then I want to shatter a myth. So let's get into this. First things first, we're talking about racket prep, but there are a bunch of components to your swing, and you can see those over here on your screen. We're talking about racket prep or the backswing, so where you actually initiate your swing from, where you make contact with the ball, what your follow through looks like. There are layers to all of that. I'm not talking about details here. The path your racket follows, the racket face, whether it's open, flat, closed, the swing speed, your balance with your body and your movement and momentum, your weight transfer, the spacing from the ball, the angle of your body and your feet. So ton of stuff that goes into hitting. The goal is to eventually make all of these components subconscious. We don't actively need to teach all of these, but, and I put a little reminder for myself for the plug, is if you want me to take a look at your swing, your technique, your tactics, send me an email. I'm putting my email on the screen here, ahad@arperformance.com. I've done this with a bunch of you guys from around the world, and I'm very grateful for you reaching out and allowing me and trusting me to help you. I have a very seamless process. You send me a video, I analyze the video holistically, and then we jointly come up with the focus and we create some goals. And then for the super keeners, we even do weekly video sessions. For the ultra keeners, we've actually done that on the squash court, where we take the laptop onto the squash court and then you do your solo hitting and I assign drills and I'm correcting technique. So it's literally like having me with you. The only difference is I can't feed you different balls, so you have to be at a certain level to be able to do that. But the video analysis is very simple and extremely effective. So if you are keen to raise your game or your child's game or someone you know, send me an email at ahad@arperformance.com. All right, done with the plug. Next thing that I want to talk about: what determines the racket prep? Now, there are a few things that we got to cover here. As I mentioned, racket prep, or your preparation before you strike the ball, depends on your technique. Some people have a technique that starts low and they try to do everything with a low swing. Some people like to take a nice high big swing. It totally depends. Some people hit with a very open face, some people will close their face. Totally variable. So your technique will determine what that looks like, and there is no single correct way to do this. This is something I really want to point out. A lot of people think that there should be one grip, one racket angle. Traditionally, people will think you always step in closed stance, and if you don't know what that means, don't worry. But people used to think that there's only one way to do things, but there are infinite ways to do things, and the best players in the world are always making minor adjustments depending on the context, the execution, the purpose, etc. Everyone's body is also different, so your joint mobility and your muscular flexibility, that makes a huge difference. I have a student who's very, very good, and if he puts his arms up, he can't get his arms higher than this because he doesn't have appropriate mobility. So if your mobility is limited here compared to someone who can do this, there's a big difference in what your swing might look like, because there are many, many things that are connected through the shoulder and the core, etc. Previous injuries will impact things. So for example, I remember I broke the outside of my wrist here when I was a lot younger, and ever since then the mobility in my right wrist has never been the same. So when people talk about a cocked wrist, I actually can't bend my wrist back beyond a certain point. So my grip is usually a little bit more like this. It's never like that because I physically can't go there. So everyone has unique circumstances, and there are certainly ways around this. We're not trying to fit everyone into the same box. Point number 4, and this is critical, and this is a part I feel that a lot of people miss. Point 4 and point 5. So point 4, the pressure that you're under, so the pace of the ball, the height of the ball, your position relative to the ball, all of those things determine your racket prep. And I can't stress this enough, because this is the biggest mistake that I see people making. If you are under a tremendous amount of pressure and someone's told you that this should be your forehand racket prep, you're not going to start here if you're chasing the ball into the back corner and the ball is 3-4 inches, 5-6 inches off the floor. You are going to lower that racket prep so that you can get under the ball, and you're not going to take this big swing. If you have a ton of time and the ball is flying off the back glass, sure, you can prep with a big swing and take your time. So the quality of the ball, the position of the ball, your body, the speed, the height, etc., and then putting in the direction piece, point number 5, that determines your racket prep as well. So let's play a little game, myth busting. Question for you, true or false? There is only one correct grip and one way to swing a squash racket. What do you think? I've already given you the answer, so it's kind of redundant, but I'm hoping that you said there are many, many ways in which you can hold the racket and swing the racket. So let's get into it. We're going to use Coll as our teacher through these highlights. Let's check it out. Step number 1, when you are on the tee, your ready position is critical, because your ready position impacts your racket prep. So remember, racket preparation is where your racket starts off in your swing. Forehand here for me, backhand here for me. If I'm not in the correct ready position, in order for me to get my racket up, it's a lot slower and a lot more work. So if you look at Coll, you noticed he's not totally upright. He's got a little bit of a bend in the knees. He's standing, you can't quite tell here, but he's going to be a little bit, his weight's going to be a bit more near the balls of his feet. So he's not, his weight isn't going back. You can kind of tell because his knees are bent and he's leaning forward just a little bit while turning his shoulders so that he can keep his eyes on the ball while Ali Farag hits it. The big one that people miss is notice his racket is straight out. It's basically out at waist level. Because from here, if he wants to volley, it's far quicker to just get the racket up. And if you notice as I do this, I'm not just turning my racket, I'm rotating my shoulders, and then my hips will open up at the same time as my racket comes back. So the ready position is critical. And now watch here as Ali Farag hits the ball. Coll takes his split step, and then he sees the ball go to the left-hand side, and his racket comes to the left right away, and he's starting to open the hips and the chest in order to move to the left side for this shot. So now let's get into some other clips over here. So the first one we're going to see is Paul Coll's back right, so forehand back corner, where he's hitting a rally drive, where it's not a lot of pressure, but it's not like crazy easy. This one is pretty easy actually, but let's see. So focus on the racket prep. I'm not looking at his movement. We're not looking at that stuff right now, just racket prep. So keep your eyes solely on his racket, his shoulder, and the position. So let's check it out. Here he comes. Notice right away, first step off the tee, he's basically at the service box. The ball hasn't even landed yet. He knows it's coming off the back wall. Look where his racket is. He's got his racket ready because that's where it's supposed to be. Let's keep watching this. And now, because he has time, notice his racket gets a little bit higher. So some people like to take a nice swing from here. Paul Coll's racket is all the way up here. His arm is set up and his backswing, his racket preparation is a bit higher because he has time. And then you continue watching. There it is. And then this is, I wasn't going to mention this, but I'll mention it. Notice how he bends his knees and he gets into a bit of a squat position because the goal is to lower yourself, raise and lower your height according to the height of the ball where you're striking it. So again, if you're hitting a really high ball, you're not going to squat, right? You're going to be reaching. If you're hitting a really low ball, you're not standing totally straight and then bending with your back. You're bending with your knees because you're going to be strong and stable from that position. Another common mistake that a lot of people make. So you see him here, nice high prep. Notice he's basically dropping to get in line with the ball. And he gets in the right position so that he can get low enough with the right extension for his swing. I know I'm talking beyond racket prep. It's just too difficult to not mention it since it's here. And then he makes contact with the ball at his comfort point. Notice his weight is very symmetrical. He's neither falling backwards nor is he leaning forward. So he's figured out exactly how, at what angle that arm needs to be extended for him to make contact with the ball. So that's number one. So remember, very low pressure, he has time. So the racket prep started up and then he adjusted his height and he already knows what his spacing should look like, etc. So let's go on to the next clip and then you see his follow through go. Okay, I'll mention follow through because I mentioned that before. I'm only mentioning all these details for this one video because it's going to go on forever if I go through every one. So he wants to hit this ball cross court. So watch, if he wanted to hit this straight, his racket would have followed through a little bit straighter towards that front wall. Since he wants to go cross, watch where his racket ends up. The racket and the arm end up going towards the left side because right there, because that is guiding the ball across the court. Okay, hold me accountable. I'm not going to talk about anything other than racket prep moving forward. And there we go, and then the ball goes cross. So now on this one, same thing, back right corner, except this time he's under more pressure and he's defending. I was about to tell you guys something else and I stopped myself because I'm overloading you. I don't want to overload either because it's going to take away from the focus of this video. So now, notice in the last video when he was under less pressure, his racket was immediately here and then it got even higher. Over here, notice his racket is lower to start with because he knows that the ball is lower. And there, low racket prep, and then he gets under the ball. Just notice the difference? Now over here, he is under pressure in the front. So let's check out his racket prep. How many folks, I used to do this, almost everyone that I coach at some point has done this. You're going to the front. You've been told you need to prep here. The ball is way in front of you. You're under a ton of pressure. You start over here, and then when you get to the ball, you then have to drop the racket to get under it. You also can almost never hit a lob if you come in from this position, because then you have to get under the ball and then hit up. So what does Paul Coll do, and what do all other high-level players do? Start with the racket nice and low, and then just get under it, and then pump the ball up. So, repeat. Forehand, back corner, no pressure, set. Forehand, back corner, pressure, start low. Forehand, front corner, pressure, start low. Why? Because when you're under pressure, you want to hit up to give yourself time. So you start your swing low, you hit up. When you have time, you can do the full, complete swing. And let's test you guys. If the ball is high, then where's your racket prep going to begin? It'll start up. And if you want to just hit the ball through the court, then you just push it through the court. If you start high and you want to attack, then you bring your swing down. But that early prep is the key. Okay, so let's check this out. So now he's going to go into the front right corner and he's going to attack the ball. See, even though he's going to attack it, he's not starting from here because the ball is low. He's playing the cross drop, so he just wants to line up with the ball. And then from there, he's just going to guide it across. Darn, I did it. I talked about guiding and not just racket prep. Yikes. Okay, next one. He is going to play an attacking straight drop after putting Ali Farag under pressure. So he's going to have time. So let's see. He has time. Ball's now in view. Gets that higher racket prep. And then he can cut through and across the ball. So had time, set up higher. And the ball was higher. Now this one, let's do that one again. So this is the example I asked you guys earlier. Ball is really high. Racket prep starts up. And then he hits through the ball to get it into the back corner again. Well, he catches a side ball early, so he kind of misses that, but that's okay. The racket prep is supposed to be high. He's going to play a forehand volley kill on the right side of the court. Let's see where the racket prep is. So ball is relatively high and racket prep relatively high. There it is. And then he's going to cut across the ball and guide it through. And I know I said I'm not going to talk about this, but I am. Look how high he hits the ball in the front wall. And it's not that tight. But look where it ends up. First bounce on the floor. When Farag is coming, the second bounce is going to be close to the side wall and fading in front of Farag. So not an outright winner. He's not going for the nick, but he's putting pressure. So that's more tactics. But the technical side of the prep, starting high and then coming down and across the ball, helps you get that execution. Okay, let's go to the next clip. Now we're on to the backhand. So on the backhand, no pressure, playing the rallying shot, so straight drive from the back when there's no pressure. Watch the racket prep. Nice and extended back and high. And then he can hit through that shot. I really want to talk about rotation and everything else, but I'm going to stop myself. Now in the back left corner on the backhand, he's now having to defend. So remember in the forehand, when he was defending, he didn't start up here. He started lower because he needed to adjust to the height of the ball and possibly hit up. On the backhand, let's see. His racket actually still starts pretty high so that he can accelerate through that shot. So here's where there's a subtle difference between the forehand and the backhand, and I'm going to talk about this after. So we'll talk about it after. I'm not going to give it away right now. But you notice that even though he's under pressure, the swing still starts, you can't see me, it still starts here. You don't start like this or really, really low. You still start in this position because you have to in order to generate power. But we'll get to that. Let's keep going. Next one. He is in the front corner, going to the front left, and he's defending. So remember on the forehand, same thing. Racket starts low, and you get under the ball, and you lift. So he didn't start up here when he was defending. He started nice and low. Key thing, when you're going into the front, always the same, whether it's forehand or backhand, You don't start with the big swing when you're under pressure. You start lower so you can get under the ball. Okay, let's keep going. Next one. He is going into that front left corner on the backhand, counter dropping the shot that Farag hits. It's like fairly easy pressure, not too high. So let's see this again. So Coll's racket prep. See, he's got that racket in the ready position, but it's not as high as it was when he has a ton of time, because he just wants to come in from here and then just push that ball into that front corner. So let's see it. And there's the push, slide, and guide into the front corner, nice and high on the front wall. Bouncing and then trying to get it tighter. That one's not super tight, but his goal is to hit it tight to the side wall. Okay, next one. He's playing the volley on the backhand from mid-court. So let's check this out. Let's see what the racket prep looks like. See, standard racket prep over here, moderately high, and then hits through the shot. So I love doing these analyses on natural deception. So let's check out Paul Coll's natural deception. And all of this, as you know by now, stems from racket prep. So here we go. Check out his racket position, backhand side, front mid part of the court. So same setting in all three situations. Look at that racket prep. You could literally superimpose these images and they would be almost identical. Now I want to point out a couple of things over here. Number one, depending on the shot that he hits, the position of the ball, the pressure, etc., the angle of his body changes. So notice in the clip on the left, his body is angled back a little bit. The clip in the middle, his angle is open. The clip on the right, it's pretty neutral. And then from there, and that's one thing. And then the other part is how steep or shallow the angle is. So he's a little bit lower over here in the clip on the left and a little bit higher in the clip on the right. The clip in the middle is very similar, actually even a bit higher in the clip in the middle. And then from there, the one big difference is the follow through. So notice over here in the clip on the left, he hits a straight drive. So where does the follow through go? The arm extends straight. The clip in the middle, he goes cross. So the arm goes across. The clip on the right, it's a counter drop. So the arm just stays straight because it's a straight push. This next clip is all about consistency. And I love this because it truly, truly demonstrates why he is so consistent and how ingrained his technique is. So check this out. I'm going to play the clip first in regular speed, and then I'm going to show you the slow-mo and point it out. So in this regular speed replay, tell me what you see when it comes to his racket preparation and consistency. Go. All right. I'm curious to know what you guys thought. Leave a comment and let me know what you thought before I actually break it down for you now. It's very simple, and I'm sure you got it. So let's check it out. So right there, mid-court, look, his racket is already set. He's running with his racket set. So check this out. He's on his way, and there. He's in the mid-court. He knows that he has to go get this ball, and look where his racket is already prepped. I'm going to go in slow-mo. Look at that, racket prep, racket prep, racket. Exact racket prep with the shoulder turn and everything. So all he literally needs to go do is put that front foot down and just swing. That is consistency. I was actually surprised, to be honest, to see his racket up that high, that early, doing a diagonal. Like, it was pretty impressive, truthfully. So I thought that you guys would appreciate that because I really appreciated it. Okay. So now let's check this out. This is what I was talking about earlier, the differences between the forehand and the backhand. And you know how we said in the forehand, you start high and then you can drop it and you might not have as big of a swing, you can have a shorter swing. And the reason is because of like biomechanics and just body position and how you can generate force and stuff like that. On the forehand, it's much easier to kind of snap through the ball. On the backhand, it's a lot harder to generate the same amount of pace from here, which is why you need to get the racket back and use a little bit more of the torso rotation. So that's why in the forehand, you can see players under pressure in the back right corner and just kind of snapping the ball across with a fair bit of power. And remember, it's not a wrist snap like this, it's a forearm rotation and a bit of wrist that goes with that. That's a big reason. So that on the backhand, you need the torso rotation, you need to use the hips a little bit more, and then with the core and the shoulder and the forearm and the hands, all of that needs to accelerate, especially on the backhand, to generate power, especially when you're under pressure. But I did put this piece about ground up, moving away from racket prep again. I've done this so many times, I'm giving up now. Your power starts from the ground. So it begins from your feet, from a stable position. You have to bend the knees, you have to bend at the hips, at the waist, and then it's all about transferring weight from your back foot to your front foot and putting in your core, your torso, and then the power finally exits through the hand into the racket to the ball. So there's a chain of energy that goes, and that's why the physical component of things is so important. If you have a weak core, you don't have strong enough, your glutes aren't firing, your quads aren't strong enough, etc., etc., the energy is not going to transfer through that effectively, and then it's not going to come out onto the ball the same way. And that's why, for all of those reasons, you can get away with less of the rotation and less of the racket prep on the forehand. You have less chance of doing that in the mid and back court and still generating power on the backhand, which is why the technical element is a little bit, more, I wouldn't say more important, I don't want to say more important, but it must really be emphasized on the backhand. That being said, here's a little cheat sheet for you guys. So the idea here is anytime you are under pressure, the ball is low, or you want to hit up on the ball, you have to start with a lower racket prep. So that means going in with your racket a little bit lower and then coming up on the ball. Anytime there's medium pressure or it's a mid-height ball, you just kind of have your regular racket prep sort of in this region. And then anytime the ball is high or you want to hit down on it, then you can exaggerate that racket prep so it gets a little bit higher so that you can generate that downward kind of diagonal angle that you need in order to come down on the ball. And at the most advanced levels, you really manipulate several, if not all, of the elements that we talked about earlier that comprise the swing, and that's how you then generate holds and deception and the natural deception that we just talked about, and all of those things arise from manipulation of that lengthy list. I think it was 11 components that I noted. That's where the best players in the world are constantly manipulating those sorts of things to throw off their opponents. So guys, girls, I hope you really enjoyed this video. I truly believe that if you watch this and you practice and you apply everything that we've talked about, it will have immediate improvements on your game. Leave a message in the comments section. Tell me what you thought about this video. Tell me how you're gonna go practice it. Happy to give you guys feedback and suggestions along the way. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up as always. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Share it with a friend. I'm sure that they will appreciate it. And as always, I'm looking forward to hearing and seeing you guys in the next video. Take care, guys.